There are a few common tasks to prepare images for Joomla, and I'm going to demonstrate those as I prepare a news story. So let me go out. I'm going to show you some thumbnail images in the gallery using FTP and compressing images. So let me show you how to do that. So here is the website here. And if you notice the news stories down here, this is the thumbnail image that I'm talking about. And if I go into the news story, you'll see often in a news story we might use the images here as well. So let me show you how I work on that. So I'm going to do the thumbnail first. I've already selected an image that I want to use for the thumbnail. And typically these are, if I get an image from a digital camera, they're fairly large. So this one is 4 megabytes. I want to get this to be very compressed in order to load quickly on the website. So I want this to be about 1/3 of a megabyte or smaller. So one way to do it would be to use Photoshop and compress the image. But I've also created this little batch file, and if you're interested in using this, just contact me and I'll help you get the software to do it. And what this is going to do is compress the image to our desired size, and that will be 130 by 110 resolution, and the DPI can be anywhere between 72 and 300 DPI. Now I know that sounds fairly technical for those of you who may not be that familiar with it, but I'll just demo that. So I've got this image here. All I have to do is just drop it onto this batch file, and it runs through the routine and creates this small image for me. Notice it's extremely small. It's only 23 kilobytes, so that's like 1/50th of a megabyte. When I open the file, there's my little thumbnail image, and I'll show you the properties of it. It's 130 by 110 are the dimensions of it, and this is 72 DPI, and that's sufficient for the stories. Now it's important on our website here in the stories, I'm going to go back to this page, we want all of these to be fairly uniform. So be careful when you're working on it. If you're going to do it in Photoshop, try to keep to that 130 by 110 dimensions. If you have a portrait image, you might want to crop it so that it looks more square like this rather than the elongated file, because it looks nicer when there's a uniformity among these images here. So we've gone through the steps of making this small file. Then I would suggest I would name it related to this news story. So I would start with the word small so that I help to remember that's my small image. Then I would put the year, the month, and then what this is related to, so that as I'm looking at it on the website, I can see what that is. So there's the Tucson confirmation ones. Now what you might do is, if you're not the person that works in the web editor, you could just send this file to that person and they can easily upload that. So that's the portion of working on the thumbnails. The gallery is a little different. With the gallery, it's not easy to load that within Joomla, because you only can load them one image at a time, and often a gallery might have 20, 30, 40 images in it. So we're going to want to send this by what a process is called FTP, and I'll demo that shortly. But before we send it up there, we also want to compress the files. So I'm going to show you, this is the folder that contains the files that we're going to currently send up there. So I've got about 22 files in here. If I change the view to the details of this, I can see that the files are all about 4 megabytes. As I mentioned before, I want to get them down closer to somewhere between 300 kilobytes to maybe half a megabyte, 500 kilobytes. I'll change this back to the large icons. So a piece of software that I've been using to do that is called Mass Image Compressor, and I'm going to launch that here. This is a free piece of software that's available through the website, or through the internet. So if you search by Google, you would find that. And what this software does is we'll take all the files in a folder and compress them and put it into another folder. So to be prepared for this, I would need to create a new subdirectory, a new folder that I want to contain my images. So I'll kind of show you again here. This WeTransfer folder has the current images that are about 4 megabytes in size. And this 2010-10-Tucson confirmations, it's empty now, but that's where I want to put the files. So when I come over here, this top line says open the directory to compress all the images. That's the directory or the folder that has the files currently. So I need to browse out to there. And this is in News Stories. And then this is the folder that has the files. Now I usually create a new folder then. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. The file was WeTransfer is the one that has the, this is the file that has the current folders, or current images. And now I'm going to point to the folder where I want them to go to. And as a naming convention, I avoid using spaces in here. So I kind of use the dash between the year and the month, and I don't put any spaces in here. Makes it much easier in the internet to do that without any spaces. Now I typically come in and say that I want the size to be maybe about 40%, and the quality I can put down to about 50%. Now there aren't any exact references here. You're just going to have to try it a little bit. You'll see how quick this goes. So I'm going to say to compress this. Take a few seconds and it's going to compress all those images and put it in that folder for me. So it took about 5 seconds. Now when I go in to take a look, all the files are there. Most important, I'm going to take a look at the details of the file. And they're at about 100 kilobytes. So they're a little small. So let me just come up and I'm going to bump the size up just a little bit. I'm going to run that again. It'll overwrite those files. And that's a little bit better, but I'm going to go still even a little higher. I'm going to aim more in the 200 kilobytes range. So that looks better to me. They're all about 1/4 of a megabyte now, and that's the size I would look for. I just want to point out one more thing that I would sometimes do, because sometimes the files that you're starting from, in other words, if I'm in this directory and I have images from a few different photographers or cameras, sometimes some are 2 megabytes, some are 4 megabytes, some might be 8 megabytes. So when I end up doing the compression at this side, it's all varied. Some of them are close to that 200 kilobyte, but other of them are at 800 or 900 megabyte. So then what I would do is I would just create another folder at this other level, and I might just call this one like a redo folder. And I take the files from this directory that are still too big and I move them into this redo folder. Come over here and I point to the redo folder as where I should start from, and then kind of go through that process again. So you can do it in a couple steps to get to that point. But those would be the steps that you want to do to get all of the images compressed to a smaller format. So now I want to move all of these files up to the web server. And I'm going to use a piece of software called FTP, and this one is called FileZilla. Take me just a moment to launch that here. Okay. So first I'm going to launch this or connect out to the server in the way that most of you would do. I'm just going to make this bigger here. So if I come in now and connect to this server, oh, wrong host, it's this one. When it connects in, it's right at, I did this one, I think I'm connected into the Milwaukee site. So it's right at the place where I have a choice to either go to the images and gallery. So when you go into FTP, that's what you'll see. When you're going to be uploading the gallery, you would just double click on gallery, and then you're to the point to upload the folder. Now I'm installing this someplace else, so I'm going to have to go out with the full privileges. Now this takes me to a different area at the beginning, so I didn't want to confuse you, but I have to step through a lot further to get here. You normally wouldn't be doing, you have to connect on any of these. So this is normally, if I were at the Tucson site and logged in with FTP, I would start here, and they want to go to the gallery page. And now I'm ready to upload a folder into this gallery. So on this side, I want to make sure that I'm at that same folder. And if you remember, this is the folder that I just created that has 22 files in there, the compressed ones. So now with FTP, I just take that and drag it over here, and it'll step through and upload all of those files. Now because I've compressed them, they'll upload relatively quickly. If I didn't compress them, it might take a few minutes for this to happen. Plus when you have the web page open, it would take a while for that to download. So I'm just going to wait a few moments for this to finish. And there we go. Might have taken about 20 seconds or so for all those files to be uploaded there. So now I'm on the server on this side. I can double click on the files, and you'll see that all the files got uploaded. So then the last thing that I want to point out then, at least related to the images here, is what you want to send to the person who is going to be doing the web editing is you tell them the exact file name of this folder. Because in the web editing side, all we have to do is point to the folder that has the files, and that will create the gallery. So again, just as a summary, what I talked about in this session was how to create a thumbnail image. I showed a batch file that we can use to create that 130 by 110 file. If you're interested in that, let me know and I can send the instructions for you to install the software for that. Or you can use Photoshop to create a file at that reduced size. Then I also showed how to create a gallery, and that would be compressing all the images and then using the FTP software to upload it to the site.